See? One vote can make all the difference. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1999 satirical comedy, Election. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all that extra content. Election stars Matthew Broderick, Reese Witherspoon, and Klein, and was directed by Payne. Based on Tom Perotta's 1998 novel of the same name, it tells the story of high school teacher Jim McAllister, played by Matthew Broderick, and his overachieving student Tracy Flick, played by Reese Witherspoon, set amidst a student government election. Happy Election Day! I figured today would be the perfect day to revisit this strange but still relevant satirical comedy. Election's a very surprising movie for a number of reasons. I actually didn't first see this movie until its Criterion release, nearly 20 years after it came out. I had been aware of it for a while and thought I knew what it was going to be about, but it turns out I had no clue. This wasn't at all the movie I'd anticipated it being, and I have a feeling that that's how most people feel the first time they see it, since it's a fairly unpredictable film. Honestly, even on rewatch, I find it to be a surprisingly subversive movie. Election is very strange. It's incredibly hard to describe because it's a few conflicting things at once. So it's not a surprise to me that this didn't do great at the box office, because there's really no way to market it without either deceiving or alienating a portion of the target audience. This movie's partly a high school comedy. But despite the fact that it's mostly set in a high school and features several teenagers as main characters, it's not your typical John Hughesian high school movie. It's got this surprising edge to it, because the line between teacher and student is kind of blurred, and they're sort of presented as equals by this movie. This is most obvious with a mildly shocking character introduction, but also present throughout, because the main protagonist is Mr. McAllister, so there's quite a bit of time spent on his life outside of teaching, which certainly chips away at that stereotypical teacher aura you'd expect in a high school movie. So even if this were just a high school movie, it would be a bit weird for the genre. But then we throw in the titular election, which adds a whole extra layer to this film. It's technically about a high school student government election, which might sound like a perfect fit for that high school comedy genre, but it's really a very thinly veiled political satire. And one of the most interesting things about that aspect of the film is that this is a very political movie without any classic politics in it. I know that might sound odd, but what I mean is that this film satirizes the political process, but not any actual political views. There isn't a Republican or Democrat equivalency to these characters, so it's not a movie that can be accused of having a political agenda or providing commentary on any particular party's platform. Instead, it takes all the components of the political process and distills them down in a way that they can be applied to a high school election. We've got some of the classic political archetypes. Two major party candidates, one highly qualified, the other very popular. We've also got a third-party wildcard candidate who reaches disillusioned voters by promising to shake up the system if elected. The movie pokes fun at the election process itself, everything from the nomination process to campaign speeches to advertising, and then the movie goes a step further, also satirizing the darker electoral issues that occasionally pop up, sex scandals and sabotage and recounts and fraud. It takes all of that and somehow makes it not feel like it's about that at all, by seamlessly fitting it into this high school story. If the premise doesn't make this sound like an odd enough movie, then we've got to talk about the characters. Almost everybody's unlikable in this movie, aside from Paul, which is hard to make work. If you view your main characters as petty and irredeemable, how do you care enough to stick with them until the end? Well, somehow this film does it. Matthew Broderick plays Mr. McAllister really well here, with the superficial earnestness of a teacher who loves their job, but the clear, crumbling interior of an unhappy and cynical person who's secretly miserable. Mr. McAllister is definitely the protagonist here, but the true standout is Reese Witherspoon as the perpetually overachieving Tracy Flick. As much as I can't stand the character, Witherspoon's performance is excellent, and this is one of those roles where I really couldn't imagine somebody else playing the character. So we've got tonally dissonant genres and some really unlikable characters. It can't get any more atypical, right? Wrong. Election's got an incredibly unique style to it. Not only does it employ a lot of unusual cinematic elements like freeze frames and stock footage cutaways, which is unique in itself, but it's presented to us from multiple perspectives. It's not done in a repetitive Rashomon style or anything, but we get pieces of this full story from four unreliable narrators, Mr. McAllister and the three presidential candidates. As part of this narrative presentation, the movie makes use of voiceover narration at various points throughout, which is yet another unique and unexpected decision that gives us further insight into these characters and the broader political satire. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one is Reese Witherspoon. She's perfect for the role of Tracy Flick. And like I said before, this is a difficult character because she's largely unlikable. She's the ultimate overachiever. The student who needs to be involved in every club, the one who needs to be the best at everything, and the one who admittedly puts in far more effort than anyone else. But she's also very naive and conniving, and totally unable to accept that others might be deserving of success. And so she's this mix of admirable hard work and irritating pettiness. Our view of the character evolves throughout the movie, and a short but telling interaction with her mom towards the end does make her almost sympathetic, but she's certainly a very unlikable character for me, which makes the fact that I love Witherspoon's performance an even bigger testament to her fit for this character. The second pro is the narrative style. It's such a unique way to present the story. The idea of four characters providing voiceover narration to a story told in flashback sounds a little hokey on paper, but it works surprisingly well. Not only does it tell us more about the characters' true feelings, since they don't always align with their actions, but it also provides a good deal of humor too. And because we get different parts of the story told by different characters, each with their own unique personalities and motivations, it's never quite clear if we're getting a truly accurate depiction of events or if we're simply being subjected to a series of unreliable narrators. On the con side, it's a little hard for me to pin down exactly what I don't like about this movie. It does have an overall air of uncomfortable mean-spiritedness that I find off-putting, but I guess my only concrete issue has gotta be the unlikable characters. They all have some okay moments, but almost all of them have some pretty despicable moments too. Everybody from the main characters to the side characters. Paul and the initial ballot counter, Larry, are really the only two characters who are decent. But it kind of gets to the point where you're not really rooting for anybody because they all suck, which I guess is just further evidence of the political satire of this film. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Election or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Election 3.5 out of 5 paws. This is one of those weird movies where I always think it's okay while I'm actually watching it, but end up liking it more once it's done and I've thought about it for a bit. I would recommend Election to people who like Alexander Payne's other movies. Like I said towards the beginning of the video, this is a hard movie to market, and so it's equally as difficult to recommend. Not because it's bad or anything, just because of how weird of a mix it is. It's a high school movie, but it's definitely aimed at adults. It's a political satire that doesn't have any specific political view, and it's told through flashback, freeze frames, and 4 different voiceover narrations. So if that sounds interesting to you, you'll probably like this a lot. It's definitely one of those movies that'll either really strongly connect with you or not connect at all, but you've kind of gotta watch it to know which category you'll fall into. If you liked Election, I would recommend Legally Blonde. That one features another really good performance by Reese Witherspoon. At first glance, the characters of Tracy Flick and Elle Woods couldn't seem more diametrically opposed, but there's actually a surprising amount of overlap with the two characters. If you want another school-related Matthew Broderick movie, you've got to check out Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's certainly a more classically John Hughesian high school movie. In fact, it is a John Hughes high school movie, but it can also be viewed as a sort of bizarro world spiritual predecessor to Election and the character of Mr. McAllister. If you want another odd high school movie without a clear target audience, you might want to watch Rushmore. It's a different type of story, but has some equally unlikable characters who also somehow don't bring down the movie. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Election? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite unlikable character performance? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe or add it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.